When most people think of calcium, they immediately think of bones. And that's understandable. It's a mineral we associate with childhood milk commercials and elderly bone fractures. But what most people don't realize is that calcium is absolutely essential, not just for skeletal strength, but for muscle contraction, nerve signaling, and cellular health. In fact, every single time your heart beats, your lungs expand, or your fingers twitch, calcium is behind the scenes driving the process. So if you're waking up stiff, struggling with muscle cramps, or feeling fatigued during your workouts, even if your diet seems balanced, there's a strong possibility you're dealing with suboptimal calcium distribution or absorption. It's not just about how much calcium you consume, but how much your body can use. Now here's a paradigm shift. The body doesn't store calcium the way we might assume. Bones aren't just long-term warehouses of calcium. They're dynamic structures. Every second of the day, calcium moves in and out of the bones through a process called remodeling. And that remodeling process is heavily dependent on the right input. Not just calcium-rich foods, but also vitamin D3, magnesium, and proper physical stressors like resistance training or load-bearing movement. Let's take a step back and think about how calcium functions beyond the skeleton. When a muscle receives a signal to contract, whether it's your biceps lifting a weight or your heart pumping blood, it's calcium that rushes into the muscle cell, binds to specific proteins, and initiates the contraction. No calcium, no contraction. That alone should reframe the way we think about this mineral. And yet, the modern diet fails us. People rely heavily on dairy as the primary calcium source. But here's where it gets interesting. Many non-dairy foods actually contain more calcium per gram than milk. And even more importantly, they offer it in a way the body can use more efficiently. For example, sesame seeds contain over 900 mgs of calcium per 100 G, more than 7x what's in the same amount of milk. Leafy greens like kale and bok choy also offer significant bioavailable calcium without the inflammatory or insulinogenic effects some people experience from dairy. Now let's connect this to something deeper, aging. After age 30, we start to lose more bone than we build. That means calcium becomes even more critical. But simply upping your calcium intake through milk or supplements isn't enough. It needs to be part of a holistic protocol that includes sunlight exposure for vitamin D3 synthesis, foods rich in vitamin K2, which directs calcium to the bones instead of the arteries, and magnesium, which helps regulate calcium channels in muscle and nerve cells. Here's the practical takeaway. Don't just think about calcium as a bone vitamin. Think of it as a performance molecule. Think of it as a driver of muscular power, brain function, and biological youthfulness. And recognize that your food choices, your daily movement, your sleep, and your light exposure all play into how calcium is absorbed and utilized. The goal isn't just to get more calcium, it's to optimize your body's relationship with it. Because when calcium flows to the right places, your bones, your muscles, your nervous system, you don't just feel stronger, you feel younger, you feel aligned with your biology. And over time, you build a body that resists fracture, fatigue, and frailty, not by luck, but by conscious strategy. This is the new framework. Calcium is movement, calcium is energy, calcium is life in motion. Would you like me to expand the next keynote as well, or move to a speech for another topic? Certainly. Here's a 600-word speech expanding on keynote 2. Surprising superfood, sesame seeds outperform milk in calcium content. Written in a science-based, motivational style inspired by Dr. Andrew Huberman, not mentioned directly. We've been told since childhood that milk is the gold standard for strong bones. Drink your milk to grow tall and strong. But science is evolving, and it's time to rethink that message. Because in reality, there are foods in nature that deliver significantly more calcium than milk, and more importantly, do so in a way the body can utilize more effectively. One of the most overlooked examples, sesame seeds. Per 100 grams, milk contains around 125 milligrams of calcium. It's not insignificant, but now compare that to sesame seeds, especially unhulled sesame seeds, which deliver an astonishing 975 milligrams of calcium in the same amount. It's nearly 8 times more. What's even more remarkable is how concentrated this calcium is. You can consume just a few tablespoons of tahini, a paste made from ground sesame seeds, and get a potent calcium dose without any of the potential drawbacks of dairy, like lactose intolerance, casein sensitivity, or added hormones. Now let's break this down further. When you consume calcium from milk, the body only absorbs a portion of it, especially if your digestion isn't optimized or if you lack the enzymes necessary to process dairy. Many adults, especially as they age, lose the ability to efficiently digest lactose, leading to bloating, cramps, or worse. The body's ability to absorb calcium from milk can drop, even though the label shows a decent number. In contrast, whole food sources like sesame seeds come packaged with cofactors, natural magnesium, phosphorus, and healthy fats that aid calcium's bioavailability. This is critical because calcium's usefulness depends on more than just quantity. It's not about how much you consume, it's about how much reaches your bones, your muscles, and your cells. Calcium without absorption is like money locked in a bank you can't access. Now consider the implications. A tablespoon of sesame seeds sprinkled on a salad, blended into a smoothie, or stirred into oatmeal doesn't just add texture, it adds structure to your bones. It contributes directly to the integrity of your skeletal system, especially important in women after menopause, when calcium loss accelerates and fracture risk rises dramatically. And this goes beyond bones. The body uses calcium for muscle contraction, including the most important muscle in the body, your heart. Every beat is a calcium-driven event. Nerve transmission, calcium is the signal. Blood clotting, again, calcium. That tiny seed, often ignored, has the mineral density to support your system from head to toe. The question is, why isn't this common knowledge? Part of the reason lies in food industry narratives. Dairy has long been promoted as the primary source of calcium due to strong commercial interests. But nutritional science now recognizes that there are plant-based alternatives that perform better, particularly when paired with a balanced lifestyle that includes movement, sunlight, and gut health. So here's the call to action. If you're relying solely on milk for calcium, you're leaving a lot on the table. Incorporating sesame seeds or other high calcium plant foods like chia seeds, collard greens, and almonds into your daily intake isn't just a trend, it's a shift toward more intelligent, integrated nutrition. True strength comes from understanding what your body actually needs, not just what it's been told it needs. When you start feeding your system in a way that respects how it absorbs, processes, and utilizes minerals like calcium, you unlock a new level of performance. Stronger bones, more resilient muscles, better movement. And that starts not with a glass of milk, but with a seed packed with potential. What would you like me to continue with Keynote 3 next? Absolutely. Here's a 600-word speech expanding on Keynote 3. Calcium absorption isn't automatic. It needs key allies, delivered in a motivational, neuroscience-informed tone without directly referencing. We often believe that getting calcium into the body is enough. You eat high calcium foods, maybe take a supplement, and expect stronger bones and healthier muscles. But the truth is far more nuanced. Calcium doesn't work alone, and consuming it without its biological allies is like building a house with bricks but no mortar. It simply doesn't hold. Let's start with the basics. Calcium is essential, yes, but it's also inert unless it's guided, absorbed, and placed exactly where the body needs it. That process depends heavily on the presence of other key nutrients, especially vitamin D3, vitamin K2, and magnesium. Without these, calcium can remain in the bloodstream, settle in soft tissue, or be excreted altogether. Worse, it can accumulate in places it shouldn't, like arteries or joints, contributing to stiffness, inflammation, or even cardiovascular issues. Take vitamin D3, for example. This isn't just a vitamin, it's a hormone that governs how calcium is absorbed from the gut into the bloodstream. If D3 levels are low, due to lack of sun exposure, aging, or diet, your body may be consuming calcium-rich foods without actually absorbing the mineral. It passes through like a missed opportunity. Now imagine you do absorb it. It's great. But where does it go? That's where vitamin K2 steps in. Think of K2 as the traffic director. It tells calcium where to go, delivering it into bones and teeth and keeping it out of soft tissues like arteries. Studies have shown that without K2, people with high calcium intake may actually increase their risk of arterial plaque buildup. So even if you're eating the right foods, calcium could be working against you unless it's being guided to the right destination. And then we have magnesium, the third piece of the puzzle. Magnesium regulates the cellular channels that allow calcium to enter and exit muscle and nerve cells. It ensures balance. Without magnesium, calcium signaling goes haywire. Muscles cramp, nerves misfire, and even heart rhythms can become irregular. Yet magnesium is depleted rapidly by stress, poor sleep, caffeine, and processed foods. So let's reframe this entirely. Calcium isn't just a mineral. It's part of a coordinated biological symphony. If you want strong bones, functional muscles, and a healthy cardiovascular system, you can't just focus on calcium in isolation. You must build the conditions for calcium to do its job. This brings us to a deeper understanding of what true nutrition means. It's not just hitting your daily numbers, it's orchestrating a biological system to perform optimally. That means getting natural sunlight each morning to activate D3 production. It means eating fermented foods or certain cheeses that naturally provide K2. It means replenishing magnesium through leafy green seeds and maybe even an evening Epsom salt bath to calm the nervous system and restore balance. Everything is connected. When you eat foods that are rich in these cofactors like sesame seeds for calcium, leafy greens for magnesium, egg yolks or natto for K2, and sunlight for D3, you aren't just checking boxes. You're creating a powerful internal environment where calcium can support strength, coordination, and resilience. This is how you move from reactive to proactive health. No more relying on isolated supplements or hoping that a multivitamin will do the job. Instead, start thinking biologically, strategically. How does your body actually absorb and use nutrients? How do your behaviors, your routines, your light exposure, your movement all influence mineral function? You begin to see that strong bones and muscles aren't built from a pill or even a single food. They're the product of a lifestyle, an ecosystem. And once you optimize that system, calcium becomes what it was always meant to be: a builder of strength, a conductor of vitality, and a protector against age decline. Would you like me to continue with Keynote 4 next? Certainly. Here's the 600-word expansion of Keynote 4. Bone loss begins quietly after 30. Here's how to reverse it naturally, written in a neuroscience-inspired motivational tone, without referring directly to Dr. Huberman. There's a moment in our biology that most people miss because it doesn't come with a warning sign or a dramatic symptom. Somewhere around age 30, bone breakdown begins to outpace bone formation. It happens slowly, silently. You don't feel it immediately. There's no pain, no clear signal. But beneath the surface, your skeletal integrity begins to shift. Year after year, the bones lose density, becoming more porous, more fragile. By the time most people pay attention, often after a fracture, a fall, or a diagnosis, it's already far along. But here's the truth. You don't have to accept this trajectory. You can reverse it naturally. Bone is not static, it's not concrete, it's living tissue, it's dynamic. Responsive to load, nutrition, and signaling, it rebuilds itself constantly through a process called remodeling, where old bone is broken down by cells called osteoclasts and replaced by new bone from osteoblasts. When you're young, this process is in balance, but after 30, unless the right signals are present, the breakdown side starts to dominate. So how do we restore balance? How do we stimulate the body to favor rebuilding? The answer is both simple and powerful. Give it the biological cues it understands. That means movement, that means nutrient density, that means aligning with the natural rhythms that tell your bones, stay strong, stay dense, stay useful. First, mechanical load. The human skeleton responds to force. When you walk, run, jump, or lift weights, your bones detect stress. That stress triggers growth. It tells osteoblasts to build. It increases mineralization and density. Without that signal, the bones start assuming they're no longer needed. That's why sedentary lifestyles, especially as we age, are so damaging. It's not just about losing muscle or gaining fat. It's that the very framework of your body stops getting the message to maintain itself. Next, nutritional triggers. Tahini, sardines with bones, chia seeds, dark leafy greens, and fermented foods all carry the nutrients your skeleton craves, often in highly bioavailable forms. Then, hormonal balance. Bone health is closely tied to hormone signaling. Estrogen in women and testosterone in men both protect bone mass, but with age, levels drop. Stress, poor sleep, and disrupted circadian rhythms can accelerate that hormonal decline. That's why managing sleep, stress, and even exposure to natural light becomes part of a bone health protocol. The body builds best when it feels safe, nourished, and rhythmically aligned. One of the most overlooked drivers of bone loss is chronic inflammation. Low-grade inflammation caused by sugar, processed food, inactivity, poor gut health can increase bone resorption. So addressing inflammation through diet, movement, and microbiome support isn't just about heart health or digestion. It's about preserving the structure that holds you upright and mobile. And finally, timing matters. When you eat calcium, when you move, and when you rest, all influence bone metabolism. Studies show that calcium absorption is highest in the morning and early afternoon. Weight-bearing exercise done earlier in the day, when cortisol is naturally higher, sends a stronger signal for bone formation. Sleep is when most bone repair happens, so prioritizing deep, consistent rest becomes essential. This is a system, not a single food, not a single workout, but a lifestyle designed to send the right messages to your body that you still need strength, that your skeleton is still essential, that it's not time to decay, it's time to rebuild. And when you align with that biology, the bones listen, they respond, they grow stronger. It's never too late to reverse the trend. The body is listening. What message are you sending? Would you like me to continue with Keynote 5 next? Certainly. Here's the 600-word expansion of Keynote 5. Morning intake of calcium-rich foods optimizes bone density, delivered in a motivational, neuroscience-informed tone without referring to Dr. Huberman. Timing is one of the most underappreciated tools in biology. It's not just what you eat, but when you eat it, when you move, when you sleep, when you expose yourself to light. These timing cues, called Zeitgebers, synchronize your internal clocks, including the ones responsible for bone metabolism. And this brings us to a powerful but overlooked insight. Consuming calcium-rich foods in the morning may significantly improve bone health and density. Your body operates on a circadian rhythm, a 24-hour cycle regulated by light, temperature, hormones, and nutrient intake. Bones aren't excluded from this rhythm. They are deeply attuned to the cycles of the day. And research shows that bone resorption, the breakdown of bone, is higher during the night, especially during sleep. On the flip side, bone formation and calcium uptake tend to be more efficient during daylight hours, particularly in the morning to early afternoon window. Why does this matter? Because calcium metabolism is a highly dynamic process. When you ingest calcium in the morning, your body is already primed to absorb it more efficiently. Digestive enzymes are more active, hormonal signaling is aligned, and the gut is more receptive. This is when the machinery for nutrient uptake is operating at its peak. Delivering calcium at this time gives it the best chance of being absorbed, shuttled into the bloodstream, and ultimately deposited into the bones where it's needed most. Consider this. Most people load up on calcium in the evening through dairy-heavy dinners or late-night supplements. But during the night, especially while fasting during sleep, calcium isn't effectively utilized for bone formation. In fact, the body may actually pull calcium from the bones to maintain steady blood calcium levels, especially if intake throughout the day was inconsistent. Over time, this leads to gradual depletion of tiny losses each night that add up year after year. This is why aligning calcium intake with your biological rhythms can make such a profound difference. It's not about more calcium, it's about smarter calcium. For example, starting your day with a tahini-based smoothie, fortified plant-based milk, or a handful of almonds and leafy greens isn't just nutritious, it's strategic. It provides your bones with the nutrients they need when they're most receptive. But let's take it a step further. If you pair your morning calcium-rich meal with sunlight exposure, you amplify the effect. Natural light, especially within the first hour of waking, sets your circadian clock. It boosts cortisol naturally, helps regulate melatonin later in the day, and increases vitamin D3 synthesis, which is essential for calcium absorption. This means that a simple practice like stepping outside for 10-15 minutes after breakfast can multiply the benefits of your meal, telling your body it's time to build, it's time to strengthen. And if you combine this with movement, especially resistance or weight-bearing exercise, you send another powerful signal to your bones. We need you. Bones respond to load. Morning walks, light strength training, or yoga, all performed after calcium intake, create the mechanical stimulus that tells osteoblasts to get to work. This approach is more than just nutritional advice. It's a biological strategy, one that acknowledges the complexity of how the human body works. When you time your calcium intake with your body's natural rhythm, when you sync it with sunlight, with movement, and with nutrient cofactors like magnesium and K2, you don't just improve calcium absorption, you transform it into bone density, resilience, and long-term strength. The body listens to timing, the bones listen to movement, and when calcium arrives at the right time, in the right context, it doesn't just pass through, it becomes part of you. That's the difference between eating for survival and eating for optimal function and longevity.